And we're going to move on to our final speakers, as I mentioned, and it's our very own President-elect Brian Jordan and Ollie Bell. We're going to leave the chat with these people now. Don't know if Ollie should be here. I seen them coming in. And here we go. And Ollie, can I just say, I really enjoyed your Twitter feed over the weekend. You did amazing
Yeah.
yesterday.
Oh God.
So best of luck.
It was quite an interesting experience.
No, well done. More power to you. Brian, I'll let you kick off there, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I might just introduce myself and then I'll start chatting to Ollie as well. But I guess as Louise very kindly said, I'm the president-elect of Dublin Students' Union. My pronouns are he, him. And as well, I just want to say thank you to Louise for inviting myself and Ollie here today and to say congratulations so far. It's such an exceptional event. You are a credit to yourself. As well, in terms of why maybe I've been asked to speak here today. Shock, I'm gay. I was also the chair of the LGBTQ Society for 3 years in TU Dublin, and we were lucky enough to win some national awards towards the end. I've also spoken at events like Pink Training, things like that, on everything from just how to run an LGBT society to being asexual, things like that. And as well, Ollie, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe talk about your experience?
Yeah, so my name is Ollie. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the founder and one of the main organisers of Trans Intersex Pride Dublin. And I guess that not only am I focused a lot on trans activism, but also around kind of building solidarity with other oppressed and minority groups. So I'm very active in Rosa socialist feminist movement. I know Miriam was speaking about her experience with Rosa. I'm also involved with other kind of activism stuff as well. So yeah.
I was stalking your info on the weekend, I have to ask, but I was just like, oh my God, they're amazing. So I was like, I need to pretend like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I suppose one of the things that I'd be interested in asking about is like barriers that you might have faced as being part of, what we might call a minority group. I know myself, for example, being part of the LGBT community definitely delayed my kind of getting involved in maybe like leadership positions as like a teenager. I was always very self-conscious about, how I sounded, how I came across, fear of being bullied, because I know people in my school, it was nothing severe, but whether it's homophobic slurs or picking on me, all the usual things that we always talk about. But yeah, I've had even things like I remember my parents would have told me, oh, take LGBTQ chairperson off my CV because I'll get discriminated against. Or just making, say, if people came around to my house, they'd like hide the trophy because of how it would look. So it's very that kind of experience with me. So how do you find you faced many or any barriers being part of the LGBTQ community over the years?
Yeah, I think especially is the same for me in secondary school. I was kind of I came out when I finished secondary school because I was kind of seen as like the weird kid, so I was already kind of bullied and picked on, for various reasons that had actually nothing to do with me being an LGBT person, so I guess I grew up with a lot of shame and a lot of fear around my sexuality and my gender identity. And a lot of the kind of barriers that I face with being kind of being a spokesperson or an activist for trans rights is that there are times when I'm like, well, I felt like I wasn't trans enough to talk about trans rights, or I felt like, oh, well, maybe I'm not the best person to be speaking openly about this subject because I know like I've suffered a lot with kind of my mental health and stuff like that. So those are kind of like those kind of barriers, and actually trying to be I guess like trying to build my own confidence and my own assertiveness was also kind of a barrier because I was picked on a lot when I was in secondary school, and I grew up with that kind of a lot of shame around who I was. So it took a while for me to actually build that confidence up and build that assertiveness to actually feel comfortable speaking in front of crowds and that kind of thing, and being on panels, kind of talking about activism and stuff like that. Yeah.
But it's insane as well how like, being bullied as a teenager, even when people think, oh, when you come out, then everything's totally fine, everything's perfect. But you carry a lot of that like insecurity or shame into like whatever you're talking. As you said, even like talking on, am I trans enough? I'd have had similar issues like being asexual, having talks on that, because it's such a spectrum in itself. And you're like, can I really represent and these entire groups of people? It can take quite a while to realize that no one's ever going to be a tick box at absolutely everything.
Yeah, that's it.
And I suppose on a slightly happier note, would you say you've had any like positive experiences in terms of being a minority group in the LGBTQ community? I keep saying that so quickly because I'm too used to saying it, but in the LGBTQ plus community.
I think whenever we do protests, when we organise protests as part of Trans Intersex Pride Dublin, seeing the support that's there from not only other trans people, but also from the wider LGBT community. And I'm going to use like yesterday as an example. So we went and we protested Posey Parker up in Belfast. And, there was a lot of trans people there, obviously counter protesting her, but we also saw like feminist groups, trade unionists, people, other LGBT identities, and it was just such a powerful kind of thing to see. And I remember I was like chanting while the police were like pushing us back, and I was like, wow, I actually feel like I'm a part of something a lot bigger than myself, that this isn't just about me, this is about the whole community, and fighting for better rights, for equality, for liberation. So just seeing the amount of solidarity that's there whenever we do protests is just amazing. Yeah.
I think I would have had a very sorry, I'm still recovering from illness. So I'm very, I didn't get super emotional, although it is emotional.
Yeah.
I would have had similar experiences as well when I first came to college, because beforehand I didn't have any gay friends that I knew of or anything like that. And then when I started getting involved as like LGBTQ chairperson and speaking to different groups and things like that, I started to realize that there was actually like such a wealth and a culture around it. Because I just thought it was being gay or something like that, as opposed to it being like an entire community of people who are there to support you and who often feel similarly in terms of fighting for not just LGBTQ rights, but all the different minority groups that we've spoken to, heard from today, and as well, even getting involved in like the students' union, things like that. That to me anyway, unlike maybe I say actual politics, there is a lot more LGBTQ people on students' unions, and I would love to see that maybe transfer over into real world politics more, because I think the more representation we have in politics, the better that we can, and in leadership roles, the more we can start to see real change. But it's great to hear that you're so involved in like direct action and protest like that. It is really like makes me want to like get up right now. But as well, is there any advice that you might give yourself if you were like starting out again, or if you were to go back to maybe yourself as a teenager in secondary school?
Yeah, I think when I think about when I was a teenager, I don't think I don't think I could have imagined doing something like activism. And I think one piece of advice I would have given myself as a teenager would be, there is nothing wrong with you. There is like the reason you kind of feel so much shame isn't because there's something fundamentally wrong with your identity, your gender, your sexuality. It's actually the system and the wider kind of transphobia and homophobia that we see that is kind of bred within the system that makes you feel like this, that there is fundamentally nothing wrong with you being trans or bisexual. And I remember being in class whenever someone would say maybe something homophobic or transphobic, and just feeling a little bit of rage inside of me and being like, why do I feel so frustrated? And with, if I was to talk to my teenage self there, I'm like, keep that fire is going to grow, and you know, secondary school isn't forever, thank God. But yeah, just to keep that fire. And I feel like another piece of advice would be get active in activism at a much earlier stage. Yeah.
Damn, you saw my exact advice, which was basically do not be afraid of getting involved. Do not think that, you know, if you, you just, because of my parents, it was like, oh, if you just study harder, everything will work out.
Yeah.
Whereas when I see people, when I didn't even know there was like, say, an Irish level secondary school students union and things like that. I wish I could have been more involved in that. And if, you know, come out earlier, which I know is Rich saying it now. But it would be, but honestly, it would have meant I'd be involved in a wider community so much sooner. I would have felt so much less lonely. So I guess, a similarity there is that we both want our younger self and possibly anyone else listening, if they haven't already, to try get as involved as possible in these different areas, whether it's activism or just being more comfortable with yourself and things like that. I suppose those are all my questions. I don't know, Louise, if any have popped up in too.
No, but I do have a question, and I don't know if it's something that you could talk on. But lately, I suppose I don't want to kind of blame it on the rise of the far right, because we know that there's a whole propaganda machine behind it. Eileen Flynn spoke amazingly on this earlier on, Annie touched on it too. But like, watching these people burn books by Juno Dawson and people who, like, this just is shocking. I feel like we're in America right now, and it's actually just really, really concerning me that a small minority group of people can cause so much havoc. And talking about exactly what you guys have both been saying there, shame. It's instilling shame now in today's generation of trans and non-binary people, like who were finally seeing that it's okay to come out and beat themselves and beauty of the yard, but all of a sudden, no, some elements and swords blocking a library. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on that a little bit. What you think? What steps could we be taking? Even as you know, what could we be doing to support it that we're not already doing now? There's Annie there. Our LGBTQ plus community and family is the best. Like, what could you see yourselves doing? Brian, from your perspective as an SU officer and even just a member of the community, and Ollie from your activism. Right, and if anyone wants to jump in as well, come on.
I suppose what I always say when I hear about the far right and all of that is there is so much more of us than there are of them. I think maybe a lot of the time we try to see, sometimes I think maybe students union we don't do enough direct action. We're not loud enough. I mean, we were afraid of, giving them any sort of clout or even speaking about them. And we don't necessarily need to, talk about them to push forward our message and things like that. But I guess my advice, however simplistic, is there are so many, as I said again, there's so many more of us. Not that it's just a numbers game, but, look at all of us here now, for example. We could probably make a much larger protest than there is going on beside the library. But yeah, what do you think, Ollie?
Yeah, I think with the kind of Juno Dawson, the kind of attacks on library workers, I think it's just shows how essential that the LGBT movement also ties in with the movement for workers for safety and better kind of conditions and better rights. And I think that we absolutely should be broadening out our movement to encapsulate broader demands for the working class, and that the reason the far right are scapegoating migrants and trans people is because they know that if they spread lies, if they spread rumors, if they smear both these very vulnerable communities, that's a kind of a recruitment tool for them to get maybe more ordinary people on board with their kind of damaging and toxic politics. And we know, they're targeting trans people because fundamentally trans people challenge the status quo and challenge the gender binary that the system kind of needs to survive. And so I think when we're talking about the context of the far right, I think it's more kind of allies and fighters for trans people. It's needed more than ever. So we need, more people standing up, and we need more people attending protests and building that kind of mass movement to fight for rights for everyone, basically.
Yeah, and I feel like it can be that kind of fear of that bystander effect or just being too passive. So
Yeah.
I've had people all the time who say, "Oh, but you know, you have equal rights now. Oh, it's fine." I mean, again, speaking as a cis LGBTQ gay person, when we don't even need to look for 2 seconds at trans rights and healthcare to know that's not the case at all. But it's that perception that everything is almost fine. So like, oh, they can take a step back and just fight for it, and it's like there are so many vulnerable groups that need so much more support, and for people to actually educate themselves and things like that to make sure we can actually better support everyone. If that made any sense?
Yeah.
No, it does. Actually, Annie made a point earlier on when she was doing her address like that. It's only the second time since the most recent government form that the LGBT community met like within the Oireachtas. So like I wonder, like, is there something that we could be doing to kind of push our openly gay, openly LGBT community politicians, like so Leo Varadkar being a big kind of case in point. Like he's come out, he's openly gay, but he's come up and said so many things in the last couple of weeks, especially that are anti his community. So I mean, I'm in Dublin West. He's our politician. He's ignored every single email I've ever sent him. Especially being from a student union, we've not gotten the support there. But is there something I could be doing as a student union officer? What could I be doing to support the community? I mean, I probably answered my own question, but I just kind of wanted to make a point of saying like there's that person, he's our Taoiseach, and he's not supporting the cause. So what could we be doing to push them? Maybe I'll get into government.
I was going to say, step one, Ollie and I will become co-Taoiseachs. I mean, not to quote someone from USI a week or two ago, but if politicians are failing to do what they're meant to do, we're allowed to, name and shame them, so to speak. We can highlight the fact that in government at the moment that LGBT community, like I don't even know if that was a thing, which is first of all my own failing, but also government failing, I would argue. And then as well as the fact that we should have an openly gay Taoiseach who's then not really supporting the community in the way that I would expect, like at being a baseline level, and has kind of completely failed, in my opinion, of anything in terms of like trans healthcare, things like that. I think it's okay to highlight that and push that far more. Maybe I'm too dramatic. Ollie, what do you think?
I think well, of course, it's great. It would be great to have more representation in Parliament and in the Dáil. I think we need to look broader than just the kind of the structures that we have. It's with Trans and Intersex Pride Dublin and kind of broader movements I'm involved with. We really do believe in the people power and the strength of communities coming together and standing together, whether that be in direct action or with protests, holding those in power to account. And I think I think we just need to look at Leo Varadkar to see that even though we have, representation of gay men in the Dáil, doesn't necessarily translate into social progress for the LGBT community, especially with some of the remarks he's made about like trans women in prisons more recently, and the fact that it's all like the trans healthcare system has gotten worse since he has become Taoiseach. So I think we need to kind of even look outside of the kind of power structures of the electoral politics and look at movements out on the streets as well.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point because you can have all the representation you want in politics, but it might not necessarily actually correlate with social improvements. Because again, people in the LGBTQ community can be homophobic or transphobic, things like that. I mean, not to end on a negative, there's many who are not, but it is something to just be aware of when we kind of look at these kind of systems.
No, it makes total sense. Unless there's any other questions from the floor, I think we can kind of wrap up here. But Senator Annie Hoey, would you like to pop on for one more minute and we can say goodbye to everybody? You might even have some comments to make about your experiences in the Dáil if you're here with us. I think you are. And we have, Jill would like to say something as well. Bear with me while Annie comes on to us. And so actually Jill Barrett is the original organizer of Lift the Lid and Equality. Jill, you should be able to pop on now when you're ready.
Okay, great. Thanks, Louise. I just wanted to say, lads, thank you so much, both for Brian in particular for taking on the baton, and then Louise got the dirty work doing all the organizing. But oh my goodness, I couldn't be prouder of the two of you. But really, hats off. I've really enjoyed every minute. I've been posting like a maniac there on LinkedIn. So if anybody's on LinkedIn, and Brian, you have to connect to me at some stage. You can't escape me forever. So I'm actually very emotional all throughout the day, because I'm just thinking it's just great. It wouldn't have happened this year, lads, if you hadn't taken it on. So I'm delighted. It was really, really great that you did, and I think you've more than done justice to the title, and hopefully we'll be starting to plan now for Lift the Lid 2024. And I just think it's so important to have these conversations and to inspire and to motivate others to do what you're all doing in terms of again, increasing that representation, because and I would love to say, as I always say, I love to say to see a day when none of this is worthy of conversation, because it's so normal. So that's the day that I hope will come. So thanks very much.
That's lovely. Thanks a million. Brian, do you have any comments you want to make as the president of the Student Union?
I was going to say I will connect you on LinkedIn eventually. I use it once a year, so that's why I'm not choosing to ignore you. I'm just very much underutilizing that service. And no, honestly, hats off completely to Louise, who orchestrated this entire thing. I mean, I did my usual delegation technique of seeing this event last year when Jill actually invited me to speak at it before, and just seeing how great it was. And then when I just thought this would be amazing to try and replicate ourselves on behalf of the Students' Union. And then Jill was so helpful and instrumental in giving us all the information on how she did, everything from email correspondence to even their graphics. And then we're able to, from there, make it into our own. So, but again, hats off to Louise, who was exceptional in organizing all that. I just did my usual, here's some content, figure it out from here.
Story of my life. Thank you so much, Brian. And Annie, I sorry, no, I know you were busy, but I wanted to kind of get you to see if you were still around to jump on and get your final thoughts on how the event has gone, and if you've any thoughts on even what Ollie and Brian have spoken about from your position in the Senate. We'd love to kind of get that, and we can finish up.
Busy is a strong word. I've left my room and I've gone down to the pool. But I was just enjoying the conversation so much. I wanted to stay on to listen to what everyone was saying. So I just was really inspired by what people were saying. And I thought there was just some really salient points made about, everyone's on the same, like, if every person here, like, if we were the ones running the world, imagine what the world would look like. Do you imagine what Ireland could look like if our communities were not being held back by societal barriers and structures that are designed to keep people down? They're designed to keep us kind of pitted against each other instead of being able to flourish and live our best lives, whether that's because we're members of the LGBTQ community, whether it's trans people being stepped on by members of our own government, or whether it's government dog whistling towards that, well, maybe the reason we don't have enough things is because there's too many people coming here. Like, that's a nonsense. We saw during COVID that if we want to put money into things, we can do it. Also, just so we're clear, money is made up. So I don't see why we seem to be running out of it. It's a made up concept. It doesn't literally exist anywhere except in human capitalism. So, in the grand scheme of things, it is made up. So I don't understand why government keeps saying we don't have enough to look after people who need to be looked after. And I know that's been a little bit facetious, a little bit silly, but in the grand scheme of things, that is true. Do you know what I mean? If we want to look after people, we can look after people. We saw that during COVID. So I just want to thank everyone for having me here, and it was a real honor and pleasure to listen to the speakers. A lot of food for thought for myself and what I can do within the structure that I am currently within. As I said at the beginning, I'm an activist first and a senator second. And I think if we'd a few more people who had that approach, Eileen and others like that in there, we could start seeing some change. But, you know, Ollie put it really succinctly. It's not within the power structures, I think, that we currently have. It's empowering our communities, putting the power back into people's hands and allowing communities just survive, not just survive, but thrive, I think is a really important thing. So I think there's a lot of people here who are making incredible change, regardless of the blasted structures that are in our way. And it was a real pleasure for me to get to listen and to be invited to listen to all of you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Annie, for that remark. It's wonderful, and I couldn't have said it any better myself. I just wanted to kind of do a special thanks to everyone who has been involved today. So Pierre Yimborg from Black and Irish, Miriam Poisa, who's an amazing activist with the likes of Yari, Rosa, and the Socialist Party. We've got Eileen Flynn as the Senator. Helena Power couldn't make it today, but we still want to thank her for wanting to get involved. Samantha Corcoran, who took her place and spoke about access to leadership. Daniel Hooley, who's a county councillor with Fingal and the youngest deputy mayor in history. Magdalena Sedlmeier is our part-time officer, and she has spoken amazingly about climate change. Crow Mullen from IADTSU, Jeanette Delahunty, love of my life, my old boss, and she spoke really well about neurodiversity. Louise Bayliss and Claudine Gallagher, who spoke about women in leadership, and of course the wonderful Ollie Bell and Brian Jordan, who spoke about LGBTQ+. This day, I know everyone's obviously, special thanks to myself for organising it. Listen, all I did was talk and reach out. So I really want to thank everyone who spoke, because it just inspired me so much, again, as it happens on a daily basis when speaking to these people anyway. But I just want to kind of finish off and say thank you, everybody. There's power in numbers. We need to keep this going. You know, we're TU Dublin SU, we're TU Dublin students. There's 30,000 of us, and there's people here today who aren't even affiliated with the university, but care about equality and diversity so much that they want to be part of the change. So guys, all we can keep doing is doing our best and advocating for the people that matter within our community. So thank you so much. Does anybody have any final questions they want to get out there before we finish? If not, you're welcome to contact any of the speakers today. All their information's online. I'll have a quick look here now. Perfect. Great. No, I think that's it. Listen, thanks again, everybody, and have an amazing day, whatever you're doing. Bye, guys.